Did you know there is a forbidden story, a terrifying and sacred account of a day when the god of creation, the benevolent sun god Ra, came within a single breath of annihilating his own creation? A story of a divine rage so absolute and so powerful that it almost erased humanity from the face of the earth. They told you the story of the destruction of mankind was a simple myth, a cautionary tale about the punishment for human sin and disobedience. But that is the lie. The great moralistic lie they told you to keep you in a state of fear and subservience. The true esoteric story is far more profound, far more dangerous, and far more relevant to your own life. It is not a story about human sin. It is the story of divine shadow, the story of what happens when the perfect, logical, and all-powerful mind of God is confronted with a flaw in his own creation and in his wounded pride decides that the only solution is to burn it all to the ground. They did not want you to know this story. They did not want you to know that your Creator is not a perfect, infallible, and benevolent Father. They did not want you to know that God has a shadow, a rage, a capacity for total and absolute destruction. And they certainly did not want you to know the secret of what stopped him, the one single and paradoxical force in the universe that is powerful enough to pacify a creator who has decided to become a destroyer. This is not a story about the gods. This is a story about the terrifying and beautiful nature of your own consciousness, the hidden rage that lives within your own inner creator, and the sacred, alchemical secret of how to save the world from your own perfect and righteous fire. To understand the cataclysm, you must first understand the state of the world that provoked it. For untold ages, Ra had ruled over a golden age. Humanity, his most beloved creation, lived in a state of perfect harmony with the gods, in perfect alignment with the laws of Ma'at. But Ra was not just a king. He was a god in a physical body, a pharaoh who walked the earth. And as the ages passed, his physical form began to grow old. His bones became like silver, his flesh like gold, his hair like lapis lazuli. He was becoming ancient, and as his physical power began to wane, a new and subtle vibration began to spread throughout humanity. Doubt. His children, seeing his frailty, began to murmur against him. They began to whisper in the shadows. Look, he is old. His power is fading. He is no longer the great and mighty creator. Perhaps we do not need to obey him anymore. This was not a great, violent rebellion. It was a subtle, psychic shift, a loss of faith, a quiet turning away of the heart. But to Ra, the god of absolute light and absolute order, this was the ultimate betrayal. He, who had given them everything, was now being mocked by his own children. His divine mind, the very mind that had conceived of the cosmos, could not comprehend this ingratitude. He could not see the fear and confusion that was the true root of humanity's doubt. He saw only treason. He saw only imperfection. And in the heart of the perfect, logical, and all-powerful Creator, a new and terrible emotion was born. A cold, righteous, and all-consuming rage. He summoned the council of the gods, the oldest and most primal of the deities, the ones who had been born with him in the primordial chaos of none. He did not ask them for their counsel. He came to them for their affirmation. He told them of humanity's betrayal. He said, I have created these beings from my own eye, and now they speak words against me. Tell me, what should I do to them? For I will not slay them until I have heard what you have to say. This is a key and chilling moment. He is not asking if. he should destroy them. He is asking for the gods' permission to do what he has already decided. The Creator had become a tyrant, seeking only the validation of his own wounded pride. And the ancient gods, the primal forces of the cosmos, gave him the answer he wanted to hear. They said, "Let your eye go forth and smite them for you, those who plot evil. There is no eye more powerful than yours to smite them. Let it go down in the form of your daughter, Hathor." The decision was made. The judgment was passed. Ra, the father, had sentenced his own children to death, and his weapon would be the most powerful and most beloved of all the goddesses. His own eye, his daughter, the goddess Hathor, the principle of love, of joy, of beauty. This is a terrifying and profound paradox. The Creator decided to use the very principle of love as his instrument of absolute and total destruction. This is the secret of all great and terrible acts of evil in the world. They are almost always committed in the name of a righteous and holy cause. They are an act of love that has been twisted, wounded, and turned into a weapon. And so, Ra sent his eye. And Hathor, in her loyalty to her father, transformed. The gentle, joyful, and loving goddess became a roaring, bloodthirsty, and unstoppable lioness. She became Sekhmet, the powerful one, and she was unleashed upon the world. The destruction was absolute. She was a whirlwind of fire and blood, a divine plague that swept across the land, slaughtering men, women, and children without mercy. The rivers ran red with blood. The sands of the desert were stained. And Ra, watching from his celestial throne, at first felt a sense of grim and righteous satisfaction. His power was being demonstrated. His authority was being reasserted. The rebellion was being crushed. But as the slaughter continued, as the screams of his dying children reached the heavens, something began to shift in the heart of the ancient god. The texts say that his heart grew weary of the killing. This is a profound and beautiful statement. It means that the Creator, in his disembodied and logical perfection, had become disconnected from the consequences of his own actions. He had made a decision from his head. But now, the reality of that decision, the raw, bloody, and visceral reality of the suffering he had unleashed, began to penetrate his divine consciousness. He began to feel. He began to empathize. He began to realize the horror of what he had done. He had not just punished his children, he had unleashed an apocalypse. And he saw that his daughter, his beautiful Hathor, had been transformed into a monster, a being drunk on blood, a force of pure, mindless destruction who could no longer even hear his commands. He had not just sentenced humanity to death. He had sacrificed his own daughter's soul to his own wounded pride. And in that moment, the rage of the Creator was replaced by a new and even more powerful emotion, a divine and cosmic regret. He knew he had to stop her. But how do you stop a goddess who is the living embodiment of your own divine and all-consuming fire? The evidence for this forbidden and terrible story is not found in the grand public inscriptions on the temple walls. Those tell the simple, sanctioned story of a just punishment. The true, more complex, and more psychologically profound version of the myth is found only in the most secret of the funerary texts, most notably in a book known as the Book of the Divine Cow, which was found inscribed in its entirety only in the tomb of Tutankhamun. Why was this story hidden away in the tombs of the kings? Because it was not a story for the masses. It was an initiatory teaching for the soul of the pharaoh himself. It was a warning to the most powerful man in the world about the dangers of his own divine power, about the terrible shadow of his own righteous anger. It was a lesson in the difference between being a ruler and being a tyrant. The censored documents, the magical papyri that speak of the pacifying of Sekhmet, contain the practical, ritualistic dimension of this myth. They are filled with spells and incantations that are not just for healing the sick, but for healing the rage of the goddess herself. They contain rituals for cooling the heart of the Great One, for turning back the Lady of Slaughter. This reveals that the priests did not just see this as a myth from the past. They saw it as a living, present, and recurring danger. They knew that the divine fire of Sekhmet was not a one-time event, but a constant potential in the cosmos and in the human heart that had to be constantly and skillfully managed, soothed, and transformed. And there is a strange and recurring image found in these secret texts. An image of Ra, the sun god, but he is depicted as old, weak, and weeping. He is a king who has lost control of his own kingdom and his own power. And before him stands the lioness, Sekhmet. But she is not just a monster. She is a mirror. She is a perfect, roaring, and bloody reflection of his own hidden, unacknowledged, and destructive rage. This is not an image of a god and his weapon. It is an image of a consciousness at war with its own shadow. It is a divine and cosmic portrait of a nervous breakdown. And this leads to the great and most challenging of all hypotheses. What if this story is not just a myth, not just a psychological allegory, but a literal, secret history? What if, in a forgotten age, humanity, in its early stages of development, did something that was perceived by our creators as a great betrayal? And what if that creator, that God, was not a mystical, benevolent being, but a powerful, logical, and perhaps even extraterrestrial intelligence? A Ra who was more of a cosmic emperor than a loving father? And what if this being, in its rage, did unleash a weapon upon the earth? A weapon so powerful and so destructive that it almost wiped us from the face of the planet. A great cataclysm, a flood, a fire from the sky that is remembered in the distorted myths of almost every culture on Earth. And what if, after this event, the Creator himself had a change of heart? A moment of regret. And what if the entire spiritual history of our planet, from that day forward, has been a long and complex process of trying to heal the trauma of that event, both for humanity and for the gods themselves? What if the new religions of love and forgiveness that have emerged over the last few thousand years are not a replacement for the old, wrathful gods, but are a direct, divine, and corrective response to the terrible mistake that was made in the beginning? This would mean that the world you live in is a post-apocalyptic world. A world that is living in the aftermath of a divine and terrible war. And you are a soul who has chosen to incarnate into this world, to be a part of the great and final peace process. The Creator God, Ra, filled with a regret as vast as his own rage, knew that he could not stop the lioness with force. You cannot fight fire with more fire. And so he turned to the one God who was his opposite in every way. He turned to Thoth, the god of wisdom, of magic, of cunning, of the subtle and elegant solution. And Thoth, the great divine alchemist, devised a plan not of war, but of transformation. He commanded the priests of Egypt to brew thousands and thousands of jars of beer, the drink of the earth, of the harvest, of human celebration. And he had them go to the mines and gather vast quantities of red ochre, the sacred blood-colored dust that is the very iron and essence of the earth itself. They dyed the beer with the ochre until it was a great, red, shimmering lake, indistinguishable from blood. And under the cover of night, they poured this sacred, intoxicating and blood-red liquid over the fields where Sekhmet would continue her rampage at dawn. The lioness, her throat parched from her roaring, her heart still burning with the fire of her divine fury, saw the great red lake before her. And she fell upon it, believing it to be the blood of her victims. She drank, and she drank, and she drank. And as she drank, a sacred and holy magic began to work upon her. The earthy, joyful, and calming essence of the beer, the very spirit of the goddess Hathor, began to cool her inner fire. The raw, celestial rage of the sun was being grounded, pacified, and transformed by the gentle, loving, and intoxicating spirit of the earth. Her murderous tension began to dissolve. Her roaring throat grew quiet, and she fell into a deep, long, and healing slumber. When she awoke, the transformation was complete. The bloodlust was gone. The divine madness had passed, and she had been reborn. The terrifying, destructive, and grieving lioness, Sekhmet, had become the gentle, loving, and joyful goddess of music, of dance, and of love, Hathor. The fire had not been extinguished, it had been alchemized. The goddess of divine wrath had been reborn as the goddess of divine love. This is not a story about getting a goddess drunk. It is a precise and powerful alchemical formula for the healing of the most dangerous and powerful of all emotions, your own sacred and righteous rage. It is a map for the journey from the consuming fire of the warrior to the radiant warmth of the lover. The story teaches a profound and forbidden truth. The rage of your own inner Sekhmet, the fire that rises in you when you have been betrayed, when you have been dishonored, when your boundaries have been violated, cannot be defeated by your own logical mind, your inner Ra. To try and reason with your rage, to try and think your way out of it, to tell yourself that you shouldn't feel this way, is to pour gasoline on the fire. You cannot think your way out of a feeling. You must feel your way through it, and you must transform it. And the formula is this: you must meet the celestial, fiery, and often disembodied fire of your rage with the red beer of a sacred, earthy, and embodied experience. You must ground the fire. This is the secret that has been stolen from you. The way to heal your anger is not to suppress it, not to analyze it, not to judge it. It is to flood your own system with a frequency that is its alchemical opposite. The red beer is a symbol. It is the music that bypasses your angry mind and speaks directly to your grieving heart. It is the ecstatic dance that allows your body to shake out and to release the stored, fiery energy of the trauma. It is the deep, loving, and sensual touch of another human being. It is the act of creating art, of working in a garden, of walking barefoot on the earth. It is any act that drops you out of the burning, righteous, and often arrogant story in your head and into the simple, humble, and healing reality of your own body in the present moment. You do not fight the lioness within. You do not cage her. You invite her to a party. You soothe her with beauty. You love her in all her terrifying and beautiful glory back into her wholeness. This is a truth that the system has worked tirelessly to hide from you. They have created a world that is designed to keep you in a constant state of low-grade Sekhmet rage, with the news, with the politics, with the endless injustices. They want you to be a simmering pot of anger. And then, they have taught you that there are only two acceptable ways to deal with that rage. Either you suppress it, turning it inward where it becomes a cancer of depression and anxiety, or you vent it in a powerless and performative way on their controlled platforms, a screaming that is never heard and that changes nothing. They have hidden from you the third and most powerful option, the sacred alchemy of the red beer. They do not want you to know that you have the power to transform your own rage into joy, your own pain into creative passion, your own inner warrior into your own inner dancer. Because a person who can do that is a person who has healed the great and fundamental schism within their own soul. They have become the master of their own inner fire. And a person who is not afraid of their own fire is a person who can no longer be controlled by the fires of the world. So, is the story of Sekhmet's wrath a forgotten myth, a cautionary tale about the dangers of a god's anger, a sophisticated psychological allegory for the process of emotional healing? Or is it a literal, secret history, a memory of a real cosmic cataclysm that was unleashed upon the earth and of the sacred alchemical science that was discovered to heal it? Or is the most powerful and most urgent truth that it is all of these things at once, and that you are, at this very moment, a child of a wounded and regretful God, living in a world that is still smoldering from that ancient fire, and that you hold, within your own heart and your own body, the sacred recipe for the red beer that is the only true and lasting hope for our healing? Let us know what you believe in the comments below.